So the IDP Dropbox has got a folder for each challenge, and the and for instance, Miriam, one of the latest things to be added to that was under interventions. Miriam added her notes, and I went through those and numbered them. I think 1 to 13, just so as to have a numbering for everything. And then coming, so finally coming around to addressing this topic of, what's there in common between 1 to 3. What I did was I said, if we actually look at the way we set up these themes, the first 5 could be called sort of applied, in they're the field of application. Are you looking at the early stage or the emergence or elimination or whatever? Whereas
Sure.
themes 6 to 10 are more about methodology, modeling, estimation, data, economics, politics. So I thought, well, really what we've got, it's really 2D. It's with applications one way and methodology the other. So I set up a table and I've gone through all the numbered ideas we've got for each of the challenges 1 to 5, and I tried to fit them into boxes in the table so as to see what we've got.
And yeah, you emailed that out, yeah.
But Cons won't have seen that, so what I'll do is I'll immediately. Cons, are you on the IDP Dropbox?
No, just on the Slack actually.
Okay. Let me see if I've got your email address. I could just email you that. That'd be easiest.
Yeah. But you didn't put 1 to 5 in the table. You put 1, 2, 4, and 5 in the table.
1, 3. No, I missed out 2 because
you missed out 2. Yeah, that's right.
When I tried to go through these ideas, Mick, I thought actually I mean, the way the environment-human interface is like the border, but number 2 is like the border between 1 and 3. And I thought actually, at least in the first instance, I would take anything that was in 2 and think of it as belonging either in 1 or 3. Okay. So I suppose I'm suggesting theme 2 isn't really needed as a separate theme because it's really the boundary between 1 and 3. I mean, people can disagree with that, but it's if you're doing a table, there's quite enough to fit on a page anyway without having 5 columns.
Taking an arbitrary decision to remove some.
No, well, I'm not taking an arbitrary.
No, I'm only joking.
I mean, because you can, it wouldn't be much work.
We can go on now. Yeah.
It wouldn't be much work to put in an extra column and move things into it if that's what people want. But I'm just explaining what I did. Well, I thought it was helpful for the discussion of relations between 1, 2, and 3, which, as you say, is I think what we're supposed to be discussing. But I better concentrate on emailing that to Cons so he can see what I'm talking about. You give us your take on the matter.
Okay. Well, I put forward a list of 10 at the last discussion that appeared on Slack, and we formed discussion around that. Now this is about the interface, as we'll talk about it, because that's what the title is, the environment-human interface. Certainly the first 2 on that list, which are climate change and land use change, both Andy and Cons were interested in those aspects, and certainly because they've published in that sort of area. So, and it makes sense that those 2 topics could appear in both 1 and 2, or maybe they'd be more properly in 1. Then the next 3 that I put on were about the movement of hosts and vectors and humans moving into different areas and ecological tipping points, and they are really in the boundary. And so if we're going to maintain a separate challenge, those things, those three topics, I thought definitely belonged in that boundary, because if one is about the environment and two is about the emergence in humans, then things like hosts and vectors coming into contact with humans and ecological tipping points are the boundary between the two. Then number 6 I put down was stuttering transmission in humans, and that could certainly go into emergence, because that sort of shows you when you've moved across the boundary. Although if you're discussing the boundary, you've got to have something about each side of the boundary. And stuttering transmission, I'm thinking about things like avian influenza, MERS, where it takes a while for it to get across from the wildlife or livestock into the humans. Then we've got things like, well, I put down ecology livestock interactions, and that's an interesting one, because I think there could be a lot there about the boundary. I've got Hendra and plenty of other things that go from wildlife into, say, livestock or other animals that humans might come more readily into contact with. The last few, the last couple of points that there don't really fit in the list so much, but they're about things that might impact on the boundary, like antibiotic resistance down, because if you're changing the way you treat, say, livestock, you might make it more likely that something crosses the boundary into the humans. And thinking about novel pathogens, someone mentioned the Global Virome Project, which is not really what I was thinking about. I was thinking about things like, recall a few years ago, we had Creutzfeldt-Jakob and mad cow disease and stuff like that. After all, that was a pathogen that no one had even thought about until it caused a lot of trouble. So I think there are things there that sit more happily on the boundary than being in one or the other. And so if we say that challenge 2 concentrates on those boundary issues,
Yeah.
and
I suppose on the thing, maybe I was biased by the things I was looking at, particularly Jess's notes, Mick, and I suppose what I was doing
she
was
structured it quite
things on the
differently.
boundary. I was sort of thinking, in a way, sort of belonged in emergence, but you know, if you're going to include them one side or the other, I think emergence mostly is the side to include them. But I absolutely don't mind reinstating a column there if you can, if someone will tell me, and I think you're beginning to do that. If someone will tell me how to decide whether things go in column 2 or column 3, I'm very happy to reinstate column 2. It wasn't my intention to try and steamroll anyone into some simplification if it's missing a useful point. In a way, thinking of writing challenges papers, there's I think at the end of the day I would probably take a sort of pragmatic point of view, which is if you're going to have papers that appear next to each other in a journal, it doesn't too much matter which point something goes into, as long as if possible, the sort of flow of argument sort of goes down the stream of papers, see what I mean? If there's plenty of material, to cover 1, 2, and 3. So I suppose I would regard it as a spectrum from things which are wholly environment, which are things which are wholly emerged. And if we have 30 challenges there, I'd just be wanting to divide them up into 3 sets of 10 by choosing almost. I mean, obviously I'd try and be a bit more sensitive to what was really being discussed, and they don't have to be equal, but see what I mean? So I think what you're doing is making a very good case that there are quite a few of these issues that perhaps should be thought of as boundary issues, and others that are clearly over the boundary into emergence. So absolutely, I don't. Let's have a revised table with 5 columns, and
Okay,
it's difficult enough just going through and picking up on all the points and having a bit of a think about where they went. And in a way, I was trying to. One of the big motivations for doing this was to just see where they were making a call on the various methodologies, which was sometimes quite difficult. And I've tended to dump things in modelling if there's nowhere else obvious to put them. Which doesn't necessarily mean mathematical modelling, but yeah. But it's but I think it was worth doing, because if I just turned up and said, look, hey, what we've got is these various phases on the one hand, and on the other hand we've got various methodologies, and there's a lot of cross-referencing to do, people would probably say, yeah, well, that's obviously the case, let's move on. And I thought by setting it out on a table, it might sort of help see what the extent of cross-referencing is. And also, I think it'd be very interesting to look at the challenges which come from a methodological point of view, the discussions we've been having on themes 6 to 10. And if one drew up a similar table saying, okay, these are methodologies, but what useful problem are they being addressed to? Then you might find, as I think I put in my concluding remarks on the email, I mean, do they just sort of fit neatly together with the thing? If you look at it, are you looking at the same thing 2 ways round? Or when you look at it from a methodological point of view, do you get a rather different sort of take on things? It's intellectual curiosity at the moment.
Right. Is there a real problem with that sort of duplication, looking at things 2 ways round, if it helps people to find it?
No, I think potentially it's very good, Mick, but I think my point there would be that we might actually, if we do this cross-referencing, we might say, well, this at the moment appears in, let's say, emergence, but actually it's a point about abstract uses of data for pandemics, and it would probably be, that particular challenge would probably better be discussed in the data chapter. See what I mean? So I think it sort of helps people maybe focus their minds on whether a particular challenge is coming from the specific application or whether it's trying to improve the methodology. Or
yeah, but it could be both.
Well, it could be both, in which case it probably has to be discussed in both, or mentioned,
Yeah. Ecological tipping points, for example, you can explain, for example, what the problem is there in, say, a boundary environment paper, but then the methodology for looking at that might be more useful in a modeling paper, so you'd have to cross-reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's what I was imagining, Mick. So I mean, the table could just be it could be just an adjunct that helps us make sure we've got
everything.
the cross references we ought to have. Yeah.
Right.
Is it just one thought? I mean, Dennis, you mentioned this, the later chapters might focus a little bit more on methods. So we have maybe, it's always a question methods, there's a question data availability, and then there's also the question maybe a little bit to link concepts. And I think this is pretty much the issue actually with sort of emergence and environment, that basically we have to link different concepts and maybe even different fields of science. So for example, we have community ecology, right? We talk about epidemiology, disease spread in humans. We talk about spillover between animals and humans, and all this is sort of in an environmental context. So this links eventually also concepts from different fields. And I don't know if that's really productive sort of to think about this now, but a little bit, it's also a question like if you focus sort of on methods in the later parts of the chapters, what should be more the focus in the first part? So could this be maybe concepts or linking maybe different disciplines?
Well, I mean, I think one of the whole purposes of having a sort of challenges volume is to try and make these sorts of connections, and it's just a question of how best to make them, really. It's like writing any paper. You know, you write a paragraph of the paper, and you think there are 3 topics this all sort of leads into. I can't do, you know, which all in a sense ought to be in the next paragraph, but they can't all be in the next paragraph. Yes. How am I going to write this so that people can understand that I'm compressing into a one-dimensional flow of text, things that keep on having cross references. So
not just as I come in sort of from a naive perspective, right? Like new to a group, and then you think, oh, okay, what's the challenge? We have this. We need maybe better data, more data. We need eventually better models and all this. So how to put this together?
Well, I guess that's all part of the challenges for, I mean, what Dennis has got here are the first 4 or 5, depending on how we agree it, of the papers, or the topics anyway, potential papers, but it hasn't included all the stuff from the other 5 groups. So I guess, and I don't know that, I mean, I'm not quite sure how they would fit into this table, because as you say, there are a lot of challenges to do with data or modeling or whatever that won't necessarily fit into one of those boxes going along. So we'll have to extend the table presumably horizontally as well as.
Well, yes, I mean, that's.
I don't know quite.
Maybe what you're saying there, Valerie, is if there's something to do with modeling that clearly, if there's a particular challenge to do with modeling that can be clearly identified as belonging in one particular column, let's say emergence, then that might be an argument for suggesting you should consider having that in the emergence paper.
Well, I think that's right.
And that the modeling paper should save itself for the cross-cutting.
Well, I think my guess is that's the intention of the groups. Yeah. But of course, to what extent that will work, I'm not sure. So maybe this part is more relevant to the first 5, the applications, and how they divide up amongst, you know, data modeling and so on. Yeah. But then we've got all the rest, and I'm not sure that if I fully understood what Cons was saying, but I think if I understood him right, the points he was making refer much more to the second 5 chapters, or topics or themes, and things considered on their own merit rather than specifically as an application, and then of course going across into other disciplines too. But I think this table is very useful in starting to capture the sort of cross-referencing that we're going to need to do.
Yeah. I mean, I said, no, it was really inspired by Jess's notes, because I read through Jess's notes and I thought this is terrific stuff, and then I thought, yes, and what she's doing here is actually linking into a whole lot of to several of the other themes quite substantially. You know, she's really not just sticking to a narrow interpretation of emergence. So, so that's why you'll find that. So in the table you'll find there references to Jess's stuff, which is number 3, so 3 point something. That you know, each of her paragraphs, I just numbered them 3.1 to 3.6. I mean, each of her paragraphs actually included several different challenges. They weren't so they appear several times in the table.
So everything that's, sorry, I'm still catching up with all this. Everything that's numbered 3 point something comes from Jess's notes.
Yeah.
From 4 point something, it's Miriam's.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, on
Yeah.
intervention.
Yeah. I thought that. I hope that works. I mean, they seem the simplest way to.
Okay. So we haven't got anything from theme. Oh no, we have down the bottom. I was going to say we haven't got anything from theme 1, but we have.
Down the bottom under politics.
Yeah. We've got a couple of things.
The thing is that what there is in the under 1 and 2 is very little. It's and it's probably my fault, because I thought that Mick's list of 10 doesn't quite sort of fit into this format, I don't think. Though, you know, we could. So I don't know whether what we do about that. Perhaps Mick will say it does fit in
well, perhaps we need to discuss the list of 10 and see how.
Yeah, see
what Mick had in mind, and whether it does, and whether it doesn't. But it, you know, needs to be somehow.
Needs to be included, not
exactly.
Not sidelined. Absolutely. Yes, I mean the only 2 points that were. And they're pretty vague ones. Were these 2 political points that came from 1, and there's a thing about cross immunity that came from 2.
Yes, you've got 2.1 and 2.2 there.
Yeah, but
where did that come from?
They were notes I took from the discussions, I think, Mick. I mean, it's
cross immunity was from Andrew's presentation.
I think I think that absolutely. The points about cross immunity come from Andrew's presentation. You're quite right, Cons. So yes, I mean, if
so do we need to look at this list of mix?
Yeah.
That I think Cons pasted into the Slack channel.
He did.
So we've got those 10 points. See how they fit, or whether they fit.
Well, the first 2 points we've already said might be better off under 1 anyway, because they overlap with 1. That is climate change and land use change.
Yeah.
Right.
Then let's have a look. See, point number 3 was.
Actually, Mick, could I make a remark? It seems
Sure.
I think the reason I've had difficulty fitting them into the table is that things like climate change and land use change are almost subheadings of columns. I mean, I'm not, you know, they don't easily, certainly sort of, they don't easily fit under a methodology. You know, it's not easy to say which row they would go in, is it? So
unless they're in policy,
maybe one needs to think.
policy.
Well, I was going to say maybe what one, but I think if you looked at climate change and land use change, or looked at an issue like that and said, why are we discussing that for future pandemics? Then you might come up with some specific points, which then would more obviously go somewhere in the table. In other words, just talk about climate change is a little bit too general to pinpoint where it would fit.
Yeah. So we're talking about, okay.
So I suppose the point about climate change and land use change is that there are things that influence
well, the influence
things like the human-animal contacts. You see, I mean, that's in the data.
The influence, the range of the animal hosts and how they come into contact with humans.
Yeah.
But what is I suppose we need to try and pinpoint what is from these things, what is the challenge as far as modelers, statisticians, etc. are concerned? Where do we see the specific challenge that we might be able to, contribute to addressing?
Well, there's already a lot of work going on in modeling the response of host vectors and pathogens to climate change.
Yeah. So is the challenge is in modeling? Is in modeling the response?
I think modeling is modeling is probably the best sort of catch-all for things where, I mean, obviously data and estimation would come into it too, but where it's a generic, if it's a sort of rather generic problem of understanding what's going on, then I tend to put it down in modeling. So one could,
well, in a sense, all those, well, I haven't got right down to the bottom, but certainly the top few are all sort of modeling challenges, aren't they?
Yeah.
But it could be also data challenges. So if we have, I mean, I just read a little bit through this 10 points. So there's like species moving around or animal movement. So this might be a challenge in terms of, do we have enough data? I mean, we have lots of data, of course, for everything. But
Yeah.
do we have the right data, and can we link this sort of data to models? Or it's, of course, also a problem, how do we filter data? I mean, if we just have heaps of movement data, we can't really use them to model disease spread, or we have to think how to meaningful filter and synthesize the right sort of data, and then match this to proper models.
After one example I was thinking of under climate change would be, for example, changing the range of different species of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
So that in parts of Australia and even northern New Zealand, you might get Aedes aegypti mosquitoes being able to establish. And then what does that say for things like dengue? And there's a modeling challenge there.
Yeah. Is ecological tipping points a separate thing, Mick, or is that something that comes in, either with climate change or land use change, that they may provoke a tipping point?
Well, these things can provoke tipping points, but there are challenges in modeling tipping points. And they come from, so that's something that I've been looking at fairly recently. And there are different things there. Detecting when you're approaching a tipping point from the data, in other words, looking for the abnormal behavior, if you like, in the dynamics of a pathogen or its host. And then there are a few papers, even recent papers, on tipping points that actually are looking at how the models behave as you approach tipping points.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure how you can relate that to data, because if you know how the models are behaving, maybe you could then say, okay, can we detect this sort of behavior in the data? Obviously, yeah, and the tipping points in the ecology, when the pathogen is actually able to tip over into the human population, is right on the boundary, of course. So out of that list of 10 originally put there, I would have thought that the first two have considerable overlap with the first paper one.
Yeah.
And the fourth one, moving humans, I was thinking there about humans, yeah, longer range movement. I don't know if that even belongs there at all, travel. So I would actually delete that one.
Sorry. So what I'm doing as you're speaking, Mick, I'm in my copy of the challenges table. I'm sort of typing them into the boxes. So I popped climate change and land use change to have some reference in column 1 under modeling. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's what you were saying.
Okay.
Number 3 was, I haven't got quite enough screens to see everything at once. Let me just.
3
mixed
moving
hosts and vectors. Again, I think that's surely, I mean, that's moving hosts and vectors is going to be, surely it's going to be related to the two things, to 1 and 2, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, I mean, they're a result of
well, I put that under both data and modeling.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Where are you putting these, Dennis? Are you putting them in the first column or the
I was putting
second column?
At the moment, that I put them in the first column. Trouble is, I haven't yet.
It's not really surveillance, is it?
Well, it was originally called environment, if you remember.
Yeah.
Well, maybe does it need to go back? We haven't got much in that column, so nothing much is going to be affected if we change the heading. Does it work for the ones we've got?
So, okay, what I'm interested to know as we go down this list, if you'd like to carry on, is whether I'm going to need to insert a new column in the table in between so as to reinstate the...
what I was suggesting was maybe what you called surveillance would actually be okay called environment, which would be...
Yeah, okay, well, I'll just...
I mean, I'm not sure whether that's right, and somebody else might like to chip in, but just trying to look at...
Well, environment, yeah, okay, environment. I mean, surveillance is something you do about the environment, isn't it? You keep an eye on it.
But you could be surveying the human population as well. You could be...
Yes, okay, well, I'll change the heading of column 1 to environment for the time being. I realize I ought really to be doing this in... I suppose I could share a screen if people, but I don't know if that's... People want to share a screen?
Am
I allowed to share my screen?
I don't know. Depends whether you're a co-host or not. I'm sure Amanda
No,
can make you.
no,
Mick is a co-host. Oh, you are now.
Oh, okay.
okay.
So Amanda must have. So
That's great. Right. Okay. Let's see if I can. Screen.
Oh, yep.
Is that?
Yes.
yeah, we can see that.
The funny thing is, I'm not seeing it as being shared, but
Well, we're seeing it.
I'm seeing it, Dennis.
can you see my pointer hovering in the environment slash
Yep.
model?
Can do.
Yes.
Oh, good stuff. Right. Okay. So as you see, I've put the first three down in this box here.
Yes, I can't see. I've lost the ability to see Mick's list now. So let me come out of that. Okay.
Okay.
I think, Mick, in deference to you, I'm going to go down the bottom of the table and change those two political points to 11 and 12, so they don't interfere with your points, which can be 1.1 to 10. Remind you, no, yours actually supposed to be 2, actually. Sorry,
I'm supposed to be 2, yes.
You're supposed to be 2, aren't you? Right. Right, you're... okay, let's leave those. So it's more the cross immunity stuff that should be changed to 2.12 and 2.11. So
Yeah, they don't
okay,
relate to
now you're allowed. So climate change can now be labeled 2.1. Land use change can be labeled 2.2, etc.
2.2,
Okay, moving hosts and vectors.
2.3.
And I mean, we could, shall I put moving hosts and vectors under data and just to...
Well, it's certainly also under data, because the data is quite important there. Very, very important, in fact.
That's, well, again, I mean, I think many of these really belong in, I think many of these will belong in more than one box, really. It's just a case of making sure everything's in. It can be spillover between boxes is allowed. Okay, so what's number
Why do
4?
we have a 1 before environment in the column?
Oh, I don't know, something happened there.
Okay, that's not deliberate, right?
Okay.
Pilot error.
Right, okay.
So we've got climate change and land use and moving hosts and vectors. What about moving humans?
I was thinking of deleting that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
It didn't come out very well in the last discussion, and thinking about it since, I thought maybe I'd delete that one.
Okay.
So then we want ecological tipping points.
So we've lost 2
So
points.
that's modeling again.
Modeling and estimation, I would say.
Right.
So,
You need to be in, don't you need to be in the environment column?
oh, sorry. No,
Oh no, a different column entirely. Oh,
Don't complicate the matter.
why not?
ecological tipping points. And would you like, can you mentally delete the one you want to delete, in which case this gets called 2.4?
2.4, I think.
Okay, so if someone will just keep track of the numbering, because I haven't got that in front of me.
Well, I've got a revised list here, but still.
Well, you do the numbering by your revised list, Mick, and you can...
Yeah, so 2.4 is fine.
So
Did you want to put that one in data as well?
I put that in estimation.
Sorry, that's what I meant, estimation as well.
Ecological tipping points goes into estimation as well, because that's something where you want to look at what's going on No, I'd say as well as modelling. You just took it out of modelling.
Well, I was trying to keep things only in one place, but
Oh, well, that might be a problem.
well, okay, let's put it down.
Or you could put also in modelling. Because you've done that somewhere else, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh God.
Now you're shouting.
Resting my finger on the cap spot. Right. Okay.
Now,
Would
what
it
else?
actually fruitful to add more aspects? I mean, we have sort of the zoonotic viruses or movement of house, but it's also like the diversity of house. So if you consider wildlife or livestock, there's different species, different life history, different ecological traits. And it might be also the population dynamics, which Andrew mentioned this. So population sizes, and this might drive density and sort of contact opportunities.
Yeah, in
Which
fact,
is all part of actually environment, right? So this adds a little bit more meat to this whole topic.
I was just looking at my revised list and thinking, oops, ecological tipping points are number 5 in my revised list. How did that happen? And realized that I'd added another one, a new number 4.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay.
And which I've put down as wildlife reintroductions, which is what you just said, really.
Where would you like that?
Well, reintroducing wildlife, which is going on in a lot of places, is changing ecological balances.
Yeah.
And things like the dilution effect and consideration of what's a reservoir of infection will come into this as well.
Oh, God. Sorry, Mick. So where are you wanting to put that? New 2.4?
New 2.4, certainly into modelling.
Okay. And what are you calling that? Wildlife?
Wildlife reintroduction.
Does that capture all the points that Cons was making?
I'm not sure about all of them, but certainly some of them, I think.
Well, I think that's what are there more Cons that wouldn't?
It depends on the perspective a little bit, right? I mean, from my perspective, I would think reintroduction fits very well. I mean, lots of timely topics, like also rewildering topic and so on, maybe invasion biology. There might be a little bit more because we have even the sort of native species or the original state. So basically just the diversity of host communities. And with the diversity comes, for example, different traits of animals.
Should we call this invasions or
put the word diversity in there?
I would maybe use diversity, and the other thing would be, I don't know if population density or different densities would be part of diversity, if this deserves another point.
Could we put all that as wildlife reintroduction, diversity and density?
Wildlife reintroduction and biodiversity or something like that.
Yes, that sounds good. Maybe biodiversity would cover diversity in terms of population density. So that's all part of species, traits, life histories, and reintroduction covers all the changes. So, well, introduction, for example, or reintroductions, right, or invasions.
the thing is, what I want to type in here is little soundbite titles. What we need to back it up is for someone, Mick, I think, to with input from the others of us, as she likes, to do a fuller note, which produces the list 1 to 10, and writes a sentence or two about the kind of things we're thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
sounds as if Mick and Cons between them could produce
exactly.
that.
I mean, I'm sure Mick and Cons between them could write a couple of sentences saying more about what we're thinking of there. and that'll be excellent. But I think the place for that is in a note in the is in a note on the specifically you know, the environment challenges, to go in the Dropbox and or Slack there.
I think that's fine. I'm happy to do that. After all, since our last discussion, I haven't spent a lot of time on this because, well, there've been other things that I've had to do. But now that our teaching year is finished.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've marked my exam papers. So, so now I have time to think about this.
That's good.
Mm.
Excellent. Right. Okay.
Can I ask? We've got you have well, I think it's about 6 at the moment. Stuttering transmission, and we've already got in here somewhere stuttering chains down. Now
that is, I think that under
it's in 3.2. It's under emergence modelling. In that,
yes, I think it could actually stay there and be removed from this one.
Okay.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
But the old number 7.
So should we now? Can you?
Which would now be number 6.
Yeah. If you just make sure you keep a master copy, Mick, so you know what the numbering is for us. So the next one, which you're going to call number 6 in revised list, is
the ecology livestock interactions.
Is that not covered by the human-animal contacts, including intermediate species, which at the moment is down under data? So, I mean, I think we shouldn't be surprised at this, Mick, because come back to my original comment on reading Jess's paper, I felt she was discussing not only her own topic of emergence, but things that belonged in other topics. So,
yeah, well, there's also
you can have a fight over whether it gets called 2.6 or 3.1, but I think it might be pretty much the same point.
Would it be useful if Mick is going to Mick and Cons are going to produce this list with a you know, a sentence or two, if you're to leave all those in there so that we can see that they've come from thinking about environment and so on, and then if we get the same point in the table, to put it down as sort of 3.1 and 1.7 or whatever, or 2.
Well, I mean, I think that, well, exactly.
I think that would be useful.
Well, yeah. So I think what you're saying, Valerie, what I've just done there, that I've said it should be in both lists.
Yes.
So
and similarly, the stuttering chains in the diagonally next box. I don't know what the numbering is. I've lost the will to live on the numbering. But
Mick had deleted that. I thought stuttering chains does really belong in emergence, but whereas
I think it. I was saying I think it does actually.
Okay.
So I would leave it in emergence, and I've just deleted it.
Right.
Okay.
But the ecology livestock interactions, after all, that's very much on the boundary, because even you things like bats, pigs, humans. In Jess's notes, I got confused because she was talking about intermediate hosts, but she didn't mean intermediate hosts in the sense that with parasite life cycles, you've got definitive host and intermediate hosts. What she meant was another host that gets infected by, say, the wildlife and then comes into more contact with humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't.
It's ambiguous, isn't it?
We haven't really. I mean, because of a lot of the focus of the IDP has been on the pandemic. We've mostly been talking about microparasites.
Yep.
But just occasionally something sort of sneaks in that's clearly a macroparasite thing, and maybe we need to just think there what we're doing and make it clear where we're considering what, because the issues are a bit different. and the
Sure.
models are different, and
Yes.
so on. So I mean, I think it's fine to have both, but when we're doing it, we need to sort of recognize perhaps what we're doing.
So maybe in the, I don't know, just a thought maybe, because I don't know how to link this productively in the discussion. To me, it's a little bit the environment. I sort of go always back and think, we talk about drivers, right? Or the background stage for basically lots of different processes. Because we talk about emergence, maybe there's emergence of a novel disease. We talk about spread of the disease. This might be either in just one population like humans or at the interface of humans, animals. So the environment is basically the background stage for all these different biological processes in terms of disease spread. So this is maybe also why we have the strong overlap, or that's where I'm coming from. I don't know how to better link this, or in terms of papers, if it would be worth it, okay, the environment would be sort of just describing all the different concepts that are part of, or that form the stage for different biological processes, right, in terms of disease spread, spillover, house sharing, etc. I don't know if that's productive now to link to the discussion, but that's where I'm sort of coming from. Or
So what exactly are you proposing here, Cons?
to me, it's a little bit the question. I mean, if we sort of talk environment, for what is it for the, so basically for the emergence, I mean, we need to understand the environment, right? Because this is linked basically to biodiversity. If we talk about disease spread, so if we look a little bit COVID, I mean, this might be more epidemiology, but it's still linked to environment. It might be linked, for example, to the larger picture, like animals, if we recognize the virus also spreads in animals, like in mink populations, farm mink, for example, right? So basically the environment is the background to understand the different aspects, biological process of disease spread. Yeah,
agreed, totally.
So the challenge is actually for this challenge series, how to link this, or now this is, well, this is, I mean, probably a challenge. I don't know what sort of the solution. This is just difficult to sort out, right? Like if it's okay, we have this overlap environment emergence. So should the environment chapter or column basically just bring this all together? Could be because it's maybe the first chapter, right? So this could just say, okay, this could define the background, what is relevant in terms of different environmental aspects that drive disease spread, no matter if you talk about emergence or disease spread in any sort of animal or human population.
Well, that's almost the way I think that the list of 10 challenges is structured, that you've got one environment, challenges in evolution and ecology of pathogens in the wild. Then the second one is environment human interface, challenges in wildlife human interaction. And then the third one is challenges in the evolution of pandemic capability. So that is very much step, step, step.
Okay.
Is what, I mean, each of these chapters will presumably have to have some sort of introductory section before the specific challenges. We need something that, you know, it's a little bit of background, scene setting, whatever. And I wonder if the sort of things that Cons was just talking about then might fit there as general sort of introduction, background. This is the general context. Would that make any sense?
It does, and then each of the individual papers, if you like, should have not an introduction, but a discussion, and looking at, say, an environment human interface paper, I would think the introduction would hark back to the environment paper, and then the discussion, as well as putting the challenges that have been listed in context, would then look forward to the next paper on emergence. So the first 5 papers would more or less be in a chain.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. I think.
Mm.
Where does that leave us for the moment? So
I don't know.
I was just putting up a list of, I've copied out a mixed list of things, and I'm putting in the numbering as we go. So I
Yeah.
think we've got 2.1 to 2.6 in place. And then we've got these other 4 from Mick's original list, which we, but
no, you've got 2.4, 2.6. You've got ecology.
this is the new.
We've got the ecology.
Right.
Yeah.
The 2.6 replaces the previous stuttering chains, which we've left out.
Yeah, human.
Ecology livestock interactions. That's
2. Yeah, that's in your list.
That's
That's on your table now, in the top left.
You've got it. It's got it under including human animal contacts and intermediate species and stuff.
yeah. So that's
in there. So the next one is 2.7, I guess, which is
yeah. Okay. So the case for the defense or opposition or something is that possibly this thing here, 3.1, the dynamics of zoonotic viruses in reservoir species, is that already, well, I suppose as the human, maybe the ecology livestock interactions is the next thing along from that, isn't it? Sort of follows. So maybe if I put it under modeling, under
sorry, which one are you putting in now?
I was going to, this is what I'm going to call 2.7, ecology livestock interactions.
No, we've got that already.
I thought we had
That's
that.
now 2.6.
You've got it in the top box under human animal contacts.
Well, this is Barbara. This was, but this wasn't here. This is well, maybe ecology livestock comes logically first. It's the wildlife into the livestock, and then the humans with either. I suppose humans either with.
Okay, so maybe one needs to well, do you want to separate the ecology to livestock from the livestock to human?
Well, livestock, and when we said human animal, it's presumably it allows wildlife direct to humans too.
Yes. So I don't know whether that's 2 separate things or one big one.
We could leave it as 2 separate ones, and I'm going to I'm going to swap them round because I feel that if we're moving from environment into humans, it sort of goes in. Seems logical to have the. Again, is this data or is this modeling?
Oh, I mean, everything is both, isn't it? I mean,
It is, yes.
you know, I mean, we've talked in the modeling sessions about data-free models, but they're they're a relatively small part of modeling, and most modeling uses data, so in one way or another.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should put it in next to the human animal ones, because I think we feel that those perhaps need thinking about together. So ecology, livestock interactions.
Okay.
Okay. I think the thing to do is get these done, because I think there's going to be, it's only the beginning of discussion. It's not the virus mutation. Is that not covered by dynamics of zoonotic viruses and reservoir species?
Yeah, so I've rejigged
I'll
them
put it
now.
down, I'll add it, I'll give it a 2.8 as well.
If you like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that could be subsumed. I was thinking that the last ones actually could be subsumed under the rest because they don't really fit.
The antibiotic, yes. Okay.
So and the antibiotic resistance is still under 2.6 really. It's for livestock interactions.
Yeah.
So I'm now down to 6 on my revised list.
Oh, so you hang on, which of so we're deleting the last 3 for the moment.
Well, we're incorporating them in the rest.
Yeah.
So the one that you've just put that A in interactions in that top box,
Yeah.
has now got antibiotic resistance as part of that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit
So I've now got
spirit of
6.
spelling things out, but I'll put it there for the moment.
Well, I think it's useful while we're trying to
Yeah, sure,
see
exactly.
where things have gone.
Mm.
So where the virus mutation, where did that end up?
Well, I think we felt it was covered by the dynamics of zoonotic.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, so, but if
Yeah,
do
okay.
you want to be? Do you want to have it as well labeled in your list as well?
Um,
I think maybe not. If we're
No,
okay, so we've got a revised list of 7, and we've sort of placed them in the diagram in a way.
so sorry, where's novel pathogens gone?
I think it's completely gone.
Right.
In a way, it's what the whole thing's about.
Yeah.
Probably emergence, right? That should be at least in there.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the hang on.
So should we possibly, like in the spirit, should I make clear that this thing is including mutation in the dynamics of zoonotic viruses?
Okay. Yep, if you like. Yep.
Well, I mean, it's almost especially mutation, since that's
what happens.
that's what we're worried about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do we need the word novel pathogens somewhere then in that first, in the second column? I mean, presumably in the data one, in the sense that that's where it's going to start.
Well, I suppose. Well, the sampling monitoring zoonotic viruses is aimed at looking for novel pathogens, isn't it? I mean, isn't that the point of that?
But those that would focus on emergence, they want a little bit more, right? They want to understand all the environmental drivers and sort of changes, but eventually understand the emergent process. So this would be linked to what makes a species either novel or spilling over into different species. So not novel per se in terms of being discovered, but being able to spill over. So maybe mutation would go in emergence. As I mean, it's both, right? It's environment and emergence.
Well, maybe you see, I mean, the first thing in the emergence column, I mean, you could spell that out and say it's, you know, the idea, the challenge is to detect novel pathogens through looking at anomalies in cases, isn't it?
Well, I guess this is all the part that Mick and Cons are going to sort out. And
yeah, but if we've now got a sort of overall picture, how do we feel about inserting a column, reinstating the environment-human interface as an extra column?
I would have thought that those things would fit under either environment or emergence.
I mean, I think my feeling really is that we're possibly all right with the. I mean, one of the advantages of keeping it down to the smaller number of columns is it forces the people who are discussing these things to keep talking to each other, rather than. And if when we get a bit further down the road, we find that either environment or emergence is getting a bit overwieldy or is wanting to, in some natural way, divide into two, then we can certainly do that at that stage. So if that's your list for the moment, Mick, could I ask you to add in role of cross-immunity and effects of cross-immunity as at least temporarily 2.8 and 2.9 to try and keep the numbering consistent, whatever. And then
do they belong in the interface?
Well,
human interface.
Well, they came under emergence because it was a discussion in Andy's talk about what cross immunity did in terms of making it easier or more difficult for novel pathogens to emerge. With I think the data here, or some of the data bearing on this, are that if you take samples from people in the wildlife trade, let's say in China, you find they've got an astonishing number of antibodies for all sorts of different pathogens they've picked up at some point. And the question is whether that might, on the good side of things, what that might mean is that the kind of people who handle wildlife with a novel pathogen may actually have some cross immunity to it, so they don't catch the disease and then they don't pass it on. The downside might be that that what goes on evolutionarily is that they pick up a novel pathogen and in some way make it worse and then do pass it on. So I mean, that's my, I'm speaking as an audience member here, not an expert, but that was what I understood Andy to be saying.
What was Andy's meeting recorded?
No, this isn't Andy's meeting. This is from his lecture he gave in the Future Pandemic series.
Okay, what was that recorded?
Yeah, that should
that
be.
was recorded, but I think Andy hasn't provided the slides for that one. But anyway, but it's certainly, if you look on the Newton website under the Find the Future Pandemics lecture series, which I think may just come up as one long lecture series of all the lectures there have been. But anyway, you should be able to find it.
I think it's in channel 1, actually. There's a video. I just have a look. Channel 1, there's the afternoon session, YouTube video. This should be the one.
In
You mean, do you mean on the Slack channel?
Yes. So yes, the video is recorded.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there.
Sorry, Slack channel under what?
Channel number 1, environment. And there's a YouTube video, environment afternoon session, 14th of October.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's not where this thing came from.
But
this thing came from Andy's lecture, which will have been given in September.
Right. So this is the problem, because I'm not seeing channel 1.
Well, do you need to join it?
Add
Aha.
If
Okay,
you
add
browse down the bottom where it says add channels, down the bottom of that
Yeah.
list, it says add channels, and then you see a list of all the channels,
Browse all channels. Yep.
and it might be that you have the option to join channel 1 and haven't.
Ah, I didn't know about that. That's why I didn't know what was going on in the other channels.
Well, I think you can join any that are of interest.
Right, I've now joined 1 and 3.
private channels, and hopefully they haven't.
Yep. Right. Okay, now I can start looking at these other things.
Yes.
Right, that's what I hadn't got to grips with. I was thinking, why don't I know what these other people are doing? Okay, well, I think that's given me and us enough material to flesh out some more stuff.
Yeah,
That would be great.
And put it in the Dropbox and or email it round, or both, or.
I think it'd be great if we do the Dropbox, because I think the value of the Dropbox is it's fairly easy to keep it like cleaned out, so that it's easy to pick up what is the latest stage of whatever the notes have got to, because in the Dropbox I make sure there's an archive folder you can go and dump old stuff in if you think suppose you have a revised version of one of these things, but you think perhaps we should keep the old version in case it comes in useful, you can just move it to archive, but just make sure you give it a name, like, channel 02 old stuff or something like that, just so it'll be easy to find it. But then that means that in the actual folders that are called things like ch02, you really just have a minimal, things that we really are discussing now, the current notes, and perhaps if there's a topical paper or two that we're all discussing, you could put the paper in there as well. And of course, mention the things in the Slack. The Slack is perhaps better for conversations.
And can you put your revised table into the Dropbox then, Dennis?
Yeah. So now that the table's been revised, it hasn't been sort of thrown out, I will put it into the IDP challenges Dropbox as an overall thing, at the parallel to all the challenges, and I'll just call it challenges table. Okay.
Yeah.
And
that's going to cause a little bit of confusion, because challenge 2 is currently not part of the table. It's sort of subsumed under the rest.
Yes, maybe it needs a note down on this table. I'm rather nervous about this thing, because it's the first time I've used tables in words, because I'm not a word person.
Well, you could have done it in LaTeX.
I could have, yeah. But this is easier. No, but this is easier because I can just write in it rather than having to recompile. Anyway,
Yeah.
There it is. I'll put it there, and we'll see what. I hope that we can persuade Andy's lot to discuss it in the second discussion this week, and we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah.
But
I'm not being defensive, but I still think it's better with a separate environment human interface column between the other two.
Okay, well, when you've done your notes, Mick, you can, as a second task, you can suggest which things should be moved there. Do you want to? I mean, if you like, by all means, why? I mean, why not? If you can work out how to insert a new column in a table in Word, which was the next thing I was going to look up, you can insert. You can reinsert that column in between the ones I've got, the first two I've got, and move them to it, if you like.
Onto a landscape mode, it should be easy enough to.
Might be better. Yes, it might be better in landscape mode, mightn't it? Now there's a thought. Well, by all means play around with and do that kind of thing, but make obviously the usual thing. If you do that, if you could then save it as challenges table Mick or whatever at the end, or probably
Yep.
Actually, MR2 Nov would probably be the thing to do, because that dates it as well.
Well,
Well, except that we have a choice. Are we doing UK dates or Auckland dates?
You can always
What-
put it,
what
you can always add ends. Well,
I'm only joking. I'm sure we'll survive.
you'll manage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what I'll do, Dennis, is if I rewrite it, well, I'll look at rewriting it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then I'll email it to you
Yeah.
with a different name to yours. And then you can look at it and say, no, I don't like that, or that's okay.
Yeah. Or
And
I think about it, Mick. Might it make more sense to wait, and if there's this other discussion this week involving Andy,
oh, when's that?
that's what I was going to just check out. Who's
Hey, I can look.
their bulletin to
This
hand?
afternoon?
I think so.
Is it this afternoon? Was it tomorrow afternoon?
The process to.
No, Tuesday afternoon.
Sorry.
I think, Mick, it makes sense not to rearrange the table till after Tuesday afternoon,
Okay. Yep.
because that may bring adjustments to it. And actually, I think if I can work out how to insert columns, what I will do is I'll re-edit it so it's got a blank second column called Environment Human Interface, and then to make it obvious that for the purposes of discussion, an option is to move things into that column. Okay.
Okay.
But wait and see where we get to with our Tuesday afternoon. I'll try and make sure that I'll try and make sure to email you with after the Tuesday afternoon discussion, so that when you wake up on Tuesday, I suppose we call this, don't you? From your point of view. No, when you wake up on Wednesday. When you wake up on Wednesday, and we're all fast asleep on Tuesday night still, you can have a look at it and see if you want to rearrange. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Cons, are you able to be at the session tomorrow afternoon?
Yes.
Yeah, that will be jolly useful, because you can provide the continuity between the two, I think.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
That would be
I mean,
really
naturally, if you're just in one topic, the other is just sort of the same from my sort of view, and
Exactly.
they link very much.
So hopefully we can.
Yeah, great stuff.
And if the UK people are happy to talk at, say, 8 p.m. at night, that would be 9 a.m. in New Zealand and 3 p.m. in New York time, which I presume that Andy and Jess are on.
Yeah, I think, did we not have that set up for the end of the week?
I know we had that discussion with Kira that we could have a one with.
It's mentioned, but I've seen no confirmation of it or anything.
No, I don't think I've got anything in my diary for an evening thing, but I know we did discuss it.
Yeah, I think the question was whether it would Thursday.
I think it would be really good to have all the, because they're only small groups, so to get all the people together to discuss this.
Yeah, so what time are you suggesting? Could be either Thursday PM, which is Friday morning for you, Mick, or it could be Friday evening / Saturday morning. Is either of those possible for you, or?
Friday morning's possible for me, and Saturday morning is not possible this week.
Right. Okay. So let's say, okay, well, that makes it definite. So Thursday evening, Friday morning, and what's the suggested time?
I think
if it's 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
UK time.
Yeah.
8 p.m. UK time, it means it's 9 a.m. New Zealand time.
Yeah.
And 3 p.m. New York time. So
we definitely perhaps
for everyone.
Perhaps Kira, because we certainly talked about it, and if Mick has heard about it, presumably Kira must have mentioned it to Mick.
Yeah, I replied saying that I couldn't do Saturday this week.
Valerie and I have a weekly discussion with Kira on Tuesday morning about scheduling things. So
yeah, we can talk about it tomorrow.
We can just check out which Zoom link we should use and stuff like that, and make sure that's okay. But let's presumably so So I think that's good. So tomorrow afternoon, hopefully we'll have a parallel discussion, but probably coming from a different point of view with Andy and Jess. And then we can have this session on Thursday evening / Friday morning to put our conclusions together and get everyone together for a change.
That'd be good. Yeah.
Okay, great stuff.
Okay, good. So see you either tomorrow or.
Well, there's something else at lunchtime today, but that's probably the middle of the night for Mick. So
Yeah.
I'm going to bed now. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Amanda. I think you can stop if you haven't already stopped.